she dispersed some of those, and there was a balance left to be paid out, 281,637. So she has enough funds in there, and she has the amounts here, to give each post-secondary student a student allowance for the month of May, and also again in the winter, in the month of January. So each, they will get an additional month's allowance in lieu of COVID difficulties, finding stress they had for COVID. So this is how she wants to use the residual funds that.
And what are those amounts?
They're in the post-secondary. They
No,
were allotted to her.
per individual.
Per individual, it would be equated to their monthly allowance. So if their monthly allowance was $800 a month, they would get $800.
And speaking with, now that we're on that subject of post-secondary, I'm hearing emerging in many more concerns and complaints, I guess, in terms of the students' living allowance. That is they are drastically underfunded, and we as a council have to seriously look at perhaps even doubling that amount for the students so that they can live. The students have been locked in with that particular amount for some time now, and we all know that during the pandemic, the cost of living has gone up dramatically for certain things in certain areas. And those living off reserve or residing off the reserve for the school, I'm sure they're feeling the impacts, I guess, in terms of rental increases and other costs of living that are dramatically putting a hard squeeze, I guess, on their available cash. A lot of people mentioned that they only have $50 to $100 to live with on the balance of the month there to buy their meals or to do other things or to participate in school events, etc. like that. So I think that we have to come up with a satisfactory package to bring those costs, address those costs on a very timely manner, and to provide more assistance to those students. Yes, they are our future, and we've got to make sure that they're comfortable and they're residing off reserve when they're going to school. Ron?
Agreed, but I'll make the motion to go with the recommendation of Dr. Renita, the education, post-secondary education, to give those amounts for those post-secondary students, or whatever they are, 1 month per as recommended for the letter.
Okay, you'll make the motion to approve the briefing notes and the recommendations contained therein.
Yes.
Okay, a second, please.
Do we have that?
Second by Burton.
Do we have that briefing though? I think that's with the question. I forwarded to James and Alicia.
James, it's there.
What is the title of it, Kathy?
Okay, this would have came from Bernita, not me. It would have been a briefing note from Bernita. It's just, I don't see COVID-19. No kind of funds. I do have a briefing note here. I apologize for that.
That's not in
I have a briefing note dated March 9th. No, I just
No. So would you like me to email?
Yeah.
No.
The one from Donovan, the laptop?
Yeah.
We have that.
Okay, yeah, so they have that. Okay. Guys, could James email me?
Everybody got it? I don't have it, but I'll go on with the conversation here. I had March 9th one with no author. Okay, a motion has been made and second.
I have a question, Chief.
Question by Yvonne.
So the, amount that Bernita is, proposing to, disperse, it's a surplus?
No, it's not a surplus, she's got special COVID dollars
Okay.
to disperse for COVID expenses.
Okay.
So she's already given a payment out this year, and there's a balance there, and with that balance, she foresees she's able to, with the current list of students, give 2 disbursements, one for May, one for, January.
Tyler.
Dr. Martin, is that, also, is that on top, like, don't they get paid that month, is that on top of the?
It would be on top of it, but most people don't get paid for the month of May. Most
But they
people-
do get paid for the month of January,
Yes, correct, so they will get.
so then they get
extra.
the additional month.
Yes.
They don't get paid for me.
No, because there's no school in May.
For the post-secondary?
Post-secondary,
Yeah,
most post-secondary universities are done.
they're usually done about the beginning of May.
Then,
March.
So our university students, they get the living allowance for the term of the class courses. Okay, so if they find a really nice apartment that's reasonable,
So on a 2-year contract.
what happens? Do we not take that into consideration to continue to pay their lease or their rent?
well, I think a lot of them get jobs as soon as they're out of university, like for the summer. Have to pay their expense.
I guess the answer is no.
Well,
Tyler.
Yeah, just the way the funding works. You pay tuition, they pay your tuition, I think you get $500 for books at the beginning of each semester, and then you get right now $1,000 for just an individual single person. As you have dependents, I believe you get $200 more. And then that's on you, if you're choosing to live on your own or anything, it's up to you to budget yourself and everything else like that to make do with, signing lease agreements. A lot of university places that are like towns like London, college, they usually have 8-month agreements for most students, from September to May. So just to balance out that school year, and then they kind of get out of it. Some of them do make those 2-year commitments, but they don't have to pay necessarily in the summer months if they're not there. It just depends on who you're looking for and if they're giving you a good deal. But that's where the concern comes in, is those prices are starting to get pretty high, and $1,000 a month is not, it's like, it doesn't seem to be doing it anymore. Like usually, if you're going to London, if you're going to Toronto, you're looking at upwards $700, $800, and you're left with $200 for food. Right, and even there's usually not all expenses are covered in that as well when it comes to like, renting and stuff like that, so it's a concern.
Please.
What do we do about the students? I had a couple approach me that had to withdraw from the post-secondary because of no internet, didn't want to travel outside because, because of COVID. And they had to withdraw, and they've lost they think they've lost all of their post-secondary funding. And that was their, to get by until summertime. Would there be assistance for them? They're having to withdraw because of COVID?
I guess the first line would be to ask the education people, Marita in particular. Your next line, I guess, is Ontario Works, to see if there's any type of specialized assistance there. I know that there's specialized programs in existence. They are showing a lot of flexibility, I guess, in terms of making considerations. So that possibly could involve. Tyler, sorry.
Just, there's also OSAP, there's two different types of OSAP, there's OSAP that you have to pay back, and there's OSAP that you can get grant. With one, it's not as much, but it's still additional. But then again, it all depends on the withdrawal, and there's lots of things there. I guess it'd be nice to talk to Bernita about those possibilities.
Tyler, would Bernita have a menu, I guess, of possible places to approach, I guess?
I believe so, yeah, actually, she talks about additional funding sources as well.
Right. So you can provide that advice to them. Okay, we've had the briefing note, moved in second, did we have a vote on it? No. Okay, I'll call for a vote then, all those in favor of the motion? Are there any objections?
I just have a comment. Can we add that we want to work on something to increase the funding for post-secondary?
Okay, we can do that after we do the motion. I will declare the motion carried. Now you can address.
So is there, how do you go about increasing the funding? Is there a committee that we go to, or how would that happen?
It's part of the policy right now, the policy addendum. The monthly rates can be changed, but I guess we have to look at, getting a budget and factoring that in, and then seeing how many students can we fund.
James,
And you could request a staff report to come back at the next regular meeting with the recommendation.
I just want to lose sight of it and forget that we were going to try and make an attempt to increase that.
Yeah.
that funding.
but I think Elaine's request, I guess, can be formulated into a request is at an opportune time or in the process of developing budgets. And if it's identified as a desired increase by council to instruct post-secondary education to increase that amount, now is the time to do it, and that they explore and make the appropriate lobbying efforts, I guess, to make those increases on that rationalized basis. Can you move that?
Yeah, and I was just gonna concur with you, it's a lobbying thing.
Yep.
Seeing, because our population is growing, it's a lot bigger. And a lot of our people are going to college more, so there should be a different type of formula. We're getting, I think, the smallest amount that we can possibly get for our population and the needs. So I think we need to formulate some sort of strategy and look at lobbying for them dollars and more, and look at the cost of living on where our kids go. Because wherever, it's always logistics and housing, and we don't come from very well-to-do, community, right? So I think that's up to us to lobby the Indigenous education and other avenues and silos of those. So I think we have to formulate that and ask our powers to be to identify those and hit those up hard.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay. We have a seconder then, to that effect, a second by Elaine. Are you clear with the instruction? She is, okay. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to your next briefing now.
Next briefing note, I'll jump into graduation computers. We have a briefing note from Donovan,
How much?
50,000.
Move it to that effect, and within the briefing note, moved by Keenan, seconder by Lyle, all those in favor?
Do we have a budget?
It's asking it to come out of the CRM dollars.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Briefing note? Okay,
Keep going, you're on a roll.
I'm on a roll. Next briefing note I have is to utilize reverse tuition revenue for the purchase of a parking lot. I did a little homework on this, and there is a Board of Education policy number 110 that states that reverse tuition dollars can be used for section 3A with the capital projects. So it can be used for capital projects at the discretion of the board, or here in absence of the board. There is funding available. This initiative began in 2019, I have two estimates here from two contractors that gave an estimate. It may be a bit dated now due to COVID, but there were estimates of 580,464.50, and another estimate of $771,881 for a parking lot. This resurfaced as a concern. Last week, we had a teacher, the teachers, some of them are forced to park on the grass or in the mud because there's just not enough parking. And the teacher got stuck in there. She was getting out. She slipped in the mud. She fell. She landed it right on her face. Her nose was all scratched up, and her knee and her leg was bruised and scratched up. She came into work, and about an hour later she had to leave because she had. So it is becoming a safety concern. So I brought it up in a briefing note to see if it's for consideration. There seems to be enough money in the reverse tuition dollars.
Marcia?
Has this project been forwarded to our elected chief and council to lobby for capital monies for that parking lot?
To my knowledge, no. It's just like I said, it was probably presented in 2019. But recently, I don't think it's been presented. It was just re-raised again.
So history?
Yeah, so they presented, in that, it was before actually 2019. They started it, and it was late already by a couple of years. And when I got to be the alternate portfolio, they wanted to do that right away. However, they didn't, that was kind of my concern as well, as look for capital dollars, but also looking at getting new monies for the school itself, and probably trying to look at reposition the school based on where it's at because of the different needs, and it's a 50-year-old building in most parts. We kind of put it on standby for that point, and then we didn't move on it, and then the board was put in abeyance, so we didn't get to move on it. But they did identify that they wanted to do that, but they have so many other needs as well. So we put that money wherever.
Marcia?
I have, I really know they need a parking lot, and it needs to be fixed. I have a real problem with spending these dollars for a capital project when these dollars could so improve the education of our children. So can we not do a patch and put gravel in that area where they're parking now as a base, just as a, to get us through this, and then lobby for capital dollars?
I agree with you that I do have some problems too in terms of using tuition dollars for bricks and mortar or any type of capital expenditure like that. I think that the course of action should be to go after the bricks and mortar type of project, type of asphalt haulers, whatever you call them, to do that specific type of work. And that those tuition dollars should be reprofiled back into better use, I guess, to serve the interests of the students. Eva?
I was just reviewing the quotes, and we got the women's shelter's driveway extended at one point, and it's blacktop.
Yeah.
And the quote was like not even a quarter of what that is. And I looked at the list there, and like gravel, they're charging you by the unit, and I'm not sure what the measurements are on that. It's quite yardage, but it's quite high. And some of their supply costs are very high, material costs, and I think like just a load of gravel, the A-job is like $250 for a dump truck. You know, in that space that they're looking at, it's where the teachers are parking now, and in front grass there, and even in front of the school where they fix the water again. I don't know if you can put anything over that if the one being runs through there, but that isn't going to cost, that much. So look at an alternative fix for that area, and quotes, and that, those quotes are 2018.
I do know that these quotes, don't, they also include, paid parking in the back of the school, a drop-off area, safer drop-off area for parents to, drop off their children on the side of the school. So it's not just the, parking lot where they're parking on the grass, it's also on the side and the back. That's what I know.
I guess the, third thing that should have included a, site plan, I guess, laying out, areas that we're going to be paved with, to give the council better visualization on
Right.
who's being proposed here.
I don't have that, those, old emails from Russ.
But I agree with you, but it seems like the quotes in there, looks like it's highly engineered, I guess, in terms of the approach being taken.
It was, reviewed by an engineer, and he thought that the quotes were low. Is what the information's in here, but when we had, the parking lot went over at the shelter there, like I said, you have to do some research into the people who are providing quotes and looking at the compact, of that area. And I see where there's drainage included in this as well, to see what's going on over there. I don't know that part, but again, I don't think it's an investment in that.
Lyle, you had some comments?
It's a lot cheaper than gravel, it's the crushed concrete, you can get 2 or 3 truckloads of cost. And you can get ground up and the size you need, so that's a lot more if you're talking something temporary. Right down in the, I think that probably is a quick fix and would suffice.
I guess in terms of, the approach that James has suggested in the past, we have the public works manager assess the situation, I guess, on the parking needs there and to come up with some options on a less expensive basis. And report it back to council at the next council meeting. Neil?
I would probably, as a safety precaution, not allow people to park on that grass area and look for alternative areas where they can park. That is safe enough for them to walk and passage through. When you're working on the beds, you need to be navigate around the mud, you know, and sometimes we've had, at other employers, we've had like snow and ice. So emails would go out on a daily basis about, being careful of these icy areas, signage would go up in that for your, so that everybody's aware that, you know, that this is what we're dealing with. But for everybody else not to park in those areas because they're not safe or walk in certain spots. So that might have to be a temporary fix.
Is there space over here at the governance parking lot for some of those teachers?
I imagine there is, if they wish to walk the distance, I guess, from here to there. I think there's a few spaces available.
And on the other side of the school, on the advanced sides, there's some spaces there, there's that driveway, is there enough, are there spaces where they go to the gates? Into the back? Can they do that for parking? Maybe the admin staff or somebody park in that area and
Staff is parking there, and there's currently about, maybe 6 vehicles there on a daily basis already, just a small little area, it's pretty full, but you're mentioning back behind the gates. See if it's being used.
not for the public, but for the staff, because there's that garage there. There might be some space there.
There's parking at social services and it can get shoveled.
James has got a parking plan.
So we as Public Works investigate, I know the original goal behind this is to create a safer drop-off environment for buses and from parents and vehicles, and to separate that process, because right now there's potential intersection with the bus drop-off, and so we're looking for these. So that was the original reason for the design, just so you know, it's not so much a lack of cars.
You know, I'm for that, but they should have lobbied for capital dollars. non-used tuition dollars.
Quick fix, I guess.
It was sent to, in here, in the briefing and all this stuff, it was sent to the last council, where it said it was, so that they can lobby for dollars. So I'm not sure on that.
Unfinished task?
Yeah,
Okay,
put that on a plan.
keep it up. Okay, based on that briefing note, it's noted in the minutes there, and it was reviewed, and some suggestions have been made. Plus, instruction is being provided to the public works manager to come up with some options in consultation with principal and senior management over there. So, Lyle will move that. Motion, a seconder, please. Second by Cody, all those in favor? That is carried. Another item?
Yes. The next one is, they go together, motion, request for an action, for two things. So I'd have to give you a little background first of, before I ask for $210,000 to buy a prefabricated trailer. So, what happened is, there was a request put out by the leadership to, prioritize revitalization and language and culture. So, we established a multidisciplinary team comprised of, Ontario Works, employment and training, education, daycare, UK, the Heritage Center. So we had a meeting, I put the notes in there. We also, at the same time, looked at ways to increase the amount of language speakers in the community. In order to do that, the best way to do that is to increase from infancy up. If you want speakers, you start with the children, the babies, to learn the language. It's a great idea, but we don't have enough trained adult speakers to work with infants to do that. Okay. So, working with Minigishkar on that, and he has experience in the past to host an adult immersion program, which in the past he paired with teacher certification. We talked about the possibility of offering another adult immersion program condensed for 2 years to parallel with an early childhood education certificate. And we are in the process of sending out proposals. We sent out a proposal to Indigenous language component for a 2-year program to hire a facilitator to oversee this program. We have money in there for honoraria. We're working with different surrounding colleges to see if we can have collaboration to offer the ECE in correlation with this program. So we have a proposal grant for that portion of this vision, if you will, for $770,000 with Heritage Canada Indigenous Language Component. That has already been sent out. In working with the group, we talk logistics of that. We need teachers. We need to have a training allowance for participants, things like that. There is a funding opportunity available to a maximum of $700,000 for 2 years through the AFN. They have identified some money, which we're working on putting the proposal. It's due March 31st. To cover the salaries of 15 participants at $15 an hour for 2 years. Within that, employment and training can contribute the summer of 8 weeks for 2 cohorts each, so we have some contribution there. Also with that AFN funding proposal, we can look at hiring a language teacher, senior language teacher, run the immersion program. So we're looking at all that. We also have identified some barriers or challenges, and one is a challenge of where are we going to host these classes? And two, where are we going to have an immersion daycare? So it came, opportunity came, there is a 7-year-old daycare that is a prefab trailer that is for sale in Toronto. It's already a daycare. It's 7 years old. It was bought as initially for $600,000. It was bought for the purpose of a daycare while a daycare facility was being built. So the trailer is, and I have a video of it, if anybody wants to see, it's a 2-minute video of what the trailer looks like. It's already up to code for Ontario standards for a daycare. So the initial thought is if it can be purchased through funds identified through Independent First Nations early childhood dollars, which there are some funds available there. We have almost $500,000 for the purpose of early childhood initiatives. So I spoke with Diane Erickson, and she said, yes, the funds can be used for capital purchases. So we're looking at tapping into that in the tune of $210,000, $190,000 for the purchase of the trailer, $10,000 for the delivery of it, because it will either have to be delivered by March 22nd, I think it was, or we have to pay storage if we want it and delivered later. And I put $10,000 in the budget for just to paint it. There's no structural damages or any major things, but just to paint and replace some shelves and different things like that. I put and porches and different things like that. I included $10,000 in the budget for some minor innovations. So Briefing Note is asking for $210,000 for the purchase of this facility. Now, where are we going to put this facility? Well, Nihishka had found an order in council number, your resolution 238318 passed on March 1st, 2018, where it identified some areas for set aside for the purpose of land-based learning in culture and language. It's there. Infrastructure to put that together may be quite expensive because it's, you know, it's at the end of a road, but you still need more sewage and plumbing. Some alternative sites could include the Ball Diamond, the High Banks Ground, the pits, perhaps behind the existing library. And in relation to that, we have a donation from a donor in the United States who's donated $50,000 US for the purpose of language-based learning that we could use to help pay for the infrastructure that's needed to hook up this facility if you choose to buy it. Okay, I think I got it all.
Questions?
Yes.
Anyone?
One thing we're waiting to receive from the merge was the strategic plan. And we haven't received that from the beginning. There was supposed to be phases of immersion, a proposal of strategies, how they wish to go about immersion continuing. And so for the past 2 years, 3 years now, that's one of the things that we're waiting for. And I think I see that this has page numbers and only certain pages of it. So I was wondering where this is being referenced from.
Are we talking about this document here?
Yeah, the one that we have attached, it's like page 52 of 101 pages. So I'm wondering where the rest of the document, where it's coming from.
I'm not sure. I was just given this, mine doesn't have any numbers.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. It just says Waffle Island First Nation Hedgerow Territory, Anishinaabe Declaration. That's what I have. It says it's a draft for discussion purposes only.
Okay, so was this a draft created by the group?
No. The only thing that the group met on, and you have the minutes there, is just a brainstorming session where we discussed ways in how to increase the language use and moving forward with the language. In reference to an immersion plan, there is in existence a 10-year plan. I don't have it here with me, but it was there when I arrived. It's there, it needs detail, and it has both, but how to get there. And one of the barriers identified in that plan is the lack of qualified Anishinaabe speakers to deliver the program. So hence why we need to have another adult immersion program to increase the speakers. And in this case, for childhood.
Do you think this is needing to be put into place, or is the right time to have this type of thing happen prior to the beginning of their 10-year plan?
I think it correlates with it. Their 10-year plan only dealt with school-age children for their immersion program. But to have children to come into the program already immersed in the language would be more beneficial, because they have a more solid background in the language. I forgot to say there's a floor plan of the mobile unit, if you, it's in your package.
I guess my question is this exercise better suited for the task for the new Board of Education?
Could be.
Because there's a couple of things that strikes my attention, I guess. I think there was a mention there that they wanted to have a separate immersion-based daycare. And I think that the council and the Board of Education, the future Board of Education, should have an in-depth discussion as to whether we want all of our kids to have some type of reinforced, I guess, or expanded exposure to language at an early age. I think we're presupposing some discussion on the education direction first.
I agree. We have a meeting set up with the daycare to see how partnerships can be had now prior to any decisions made in that direction. But the decision to, the proposal to put in for an adult immersion program is out of it.
You're talking about the adult, I was talking about the daycare, the children.
Well,
I was talking through the issues.
the adult immersion is paired with early childhood education to deliver.
That's correct. And my question to council, I guess, or what I'm trying to raise with the council, is that this centers on the, I guess, education of our kids entering into the educational system, starting with daycare. We're going around a complete discussion with the community and parents, I guess, in terms of, is this the direction we want? In terms of identifying a singular institute that would handle that, or does the community want all of their children, I guess, filtered through a system that will expose them to language?
Yeah, just kind of like this multidisciplinary team, great amount of people, a lot of good resource people.
Yeah.
But if they're talking, this is now another area of immersion that council has seen. Because we have only dealt with our school language in immersion. So this isn't necessarily coming from that place then. No.
I guess the danger, I don't want to really call it a danger, is that if we set up a separate school for language, then it proposes that we're going to set up a separate, totally separate school for the continuation of that language in another separate elementary setting, another separate school. Quite similar to a French immersion school, is that would dovetail with the daycare. Wrong.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, but they're saying, and this is why I guess, if you go back a little bit and reverse, I came on prior to after this, they had already made that decision, as you can see in 2018, to go with land use school. It was private property, from what I understand. And it wasn't clear and evident to chief and council of the day that it was still in somebody's private name. So putting community building on somebody's private land, we didn't know if we'd still have the option of having that building and the resource to it. The other thing is if you look at the functional review, and I'm sure you're well versed in it now, it's stated that we shouldn't break up the school into two separate entities and keep them together. So there's that, and as well as people keep calling our immersion, and it's not immersion. It's at best maybe advanced language, but it's not an immersion program in any sense. And I'm not trying to be difficult or whatever, but that's what the functional review points out. And there's so many things that you got to do, and we'll get there, but it's going to take some time to get to if you want a full immersion. And it takes many hours to get to that. We can only provide at that point the curriculum to grade 3 for immersion, what they're calling immersion here at our school, from SK to grade 3. And there is no immersion, as far as I'm understanding, curriculum after that. So if you go back and you look at that functional review, there's recommendations in there to do that. And some of them, the focus groups that were interviewed, that were part of education or other groups within the community, stated they wanted Anishinaabe only for all the students. And so I think that's some of the things that we have to think about when making this decision. And it's not that I'm totally for, having Anishinaabe only and all of that, but we got to look at different things as well. And I like to see it flourish and move ahead, but we have to be, cognizant of the recommendations and some of the things that are there. And as Neva said, it's good that you got a resource and plethora of people, but we have to put all of those also in the curricular to make our decision.
Kathy, then Neva?
I'd just like to respond. We do have up to grade 4 with the immersion program now. We're looking at possibly extending into grade 5 to also 6.
Neva?
I was thinking, it'd be good to just acknowledge this and accept it for information purposes at this point. And I wanted to know from Dr. Kathy Martin that this is something that you brought to council on their behalf, or is it something that you as the one director of the school is bringing forward?
I'm bringing it forward as the director of the school. Having more immersion speakers, more adult language speakers, in order to fill the need and the gaps, not only for the purpose of early childhood learning, but also for the purpose of students or families that are wishing to have their child educated in language. There's resources for educational assistants, teachers, resources that our elders are not getting any younger. So it's just a measure to revitalize the language.
So within your presentation here of this, I see that you have the notes of this group, and you have different people that have come on, including statements. At the end, there's no formal request of exactly what you want, the forward support document. And I see like your it's discussion purposes only. So the discussion purpose part that you included, right, was for your task group that you met with?
No, that was for the presentation to identify that there's been land that has been set aside. And that has been previously discussed by previous council. That's discussion purpose only. Information was given to me by to support that there was interest in the past and that there is land available for that. So you're correct in saying that the task force, it was just a brainstorming group and for information purposes, so you can see that there is a buzz in the community. Community is liking the ideas. They have a lot of their own ideas. Some of them we're working on together. So you're correct in saying that that is for information and it's not directly connected to the proposal that's set forth.
I guess on the direction that Neva was going there, I guess, is that this type of discussion, I guess, has to be opened up to the community as a whole, I guess, in terms of getting some direction and buy-in for this type of project, because I'm sure that there's a number of voices that could add to our discussion there, I guess, in terms of refining the program or requesting more definition of this in terms of the direction this is going. So I agree that the briefing note should be tabled and it warrants a lot more discussion and engagement with the community for direction purposes. Cody?
I was just gonna say that. Want to make that motion, but yeah, I was just is this gonna be like a language-based program? Is there not room at this island school? There's a vast backyard back there. It's you already have access to water and electricity, septic yard, room for all of that. You did mention putting that to baseball down, and I'm thinking sports is one of the things that our youth need to revamp. And when I was younger, we had hockey, lacrosse, baseball, basketball, and it was that was our Thursdays and our Fridays and weekends. We met up for practice and we learned how to develop as a team. We found weaknesses and strengths in different people, and we know how to play stuff. It showed us a lot of responsibility and how to work as a team. We don't see sports like that anymore. The ball diamond should be left alone in my standards, because I said something I wanted to do was kickstart fastball and stuff back up there. The community loved that. It was youth and elders. You sat there and watched the baseball game, played in the baseball game with your aunties, uncles, and grandparents watching, cheering you on. That's a big part of our, even as heritage was, we used to play, stick hockey against our fellow tribe members. And sports instead of battles for hunting grounds. So I think that's a big thing that's missing right now in culture is sports. I'd rather see a lot more sports going on with our youth than shredding up our ball diamond and putting a nursery there. That's just all I gotta say around that.
Can I just respond to?
Go ahead, Dr. Martin.
Okay, you asked if it was considered to be put by the school, and it was, but there's a plan in place already at the school where they have identified an area of extension for classroom space. And also we considered that there's already a plan, like an engineered plan for the parking lot. So it was considered to put near the school. It's just the plans surrounding the school have already been spoken for. Does that make sense?
Somewhat, I see a house with a plan here and bedrooms and stuff. How's that for education purposes?
The plan there, that's the layout of the trailer, and I think the video would show it better how it's laid out in terms of
I think he's referring to the circle homes.
Oh, to the circle.
Yeah, there's a circle
Okay,
home with
yeah.
3 or 4 bedrooms here.
Okay, that was just in the attachment for discussion purposes only, for the land set aside. That was for something
Is that for Visual Plus? I got some hands over here. I think I had Kayla, is that Elaine?
I'm kind of hearing that there's two different animals here that we're dealing with, I think. So we're talking about, I think, language within the education system, but from what I'm hearing, and a lot of this discussion seems to be revolving around more like a cultural support program, for lack of a better term. And I recall, going back several years ago, when I used to be on council, we had those similar discussions around immersion and how that was to evolve. There was no solid plan then. And one of the things I would like to see, just kind of based on the discussion that's been going around, I think this would be an item for one of our planning sessions. And if we're gonna take this to the community, I think we should have an idea of what we're actually considering. And that should be discussed around this table. And I think ideas will evolve on how we should proceed forward with that. The only thing I can think of offhand right now was in Mount Pleasant. They have that cultural center there, right? And it kind of lays out the whole tribe and some of the teachings and stuff like that. And that's kind of what I hear coming forward. And I like that idea better, rather than, it can be a part of the education system, but I think there's a lot more to it than that. And I think that's where a cultural center would be more appropriate, because the learning environment would be different. But it would also require support of the community, right? We all have a responsibility and role to play within that, where in the education system, we can't do that with the community. So I think this is kind of going outside of the box, and that's what I was saying, it warrants a lot bigger discussion. So that's where I would like to see things go. I think it should be a part of our planning. We kind of ignite the fire here and then let it grow.
Right now, I think there's too many gray areas with this plan. Like, I don't think it's even close to being a concrete foundation. Let's start it on the right foot this time. And I know immersion, you do have to have at least two fluent speakers in the center. My question, one of the concerns I might have is, like, the Ministry of Ed already funds $1 million daycare in our center, licensed daycare center. Are they gonna fund another licensed daycare center in our community? And how's it gonna affect the one that you have already? I know the supervisor is working with Chippewa and Thames, and they 5 years ago took evaluation of their teachers, and they found that they had 10% of the language in their center, and the teachers were using 10% with the children. 5 years later now, when they have the two language teachers in there, they're at 70%. So those teachers are using 70% of the language, starting from the infant room right to, I think they go to preschool room. But that's a different way of looking at immersion, and they're not calling themselves immersion yet, but they're working on it in Chippewa and Thames. And I know the leaders over there now, Kelly and Lisa, are looking into following what they're doing there also. So I don't know if you can work with them in doing that. And since school age with COVID, there's no longer a school age program there. There's a possibility of setting up that immersion program in their school age classroom. It could be a possibility, and without buying a trailer or whatever you were thinking about, because when you're talking about infants, you have to have one teacher per 3 infants, and I don't know how many infants you wanted to start out with, but that's an expense to have an infant room program and a toddler room program. Then you have one teacher for 5 children. So there's a lot of staff that you would need to, and $15 isn't gonna do it, not for a registered ECE these days. $15 an hour just doesn't. it isn't gonna be what they're getting paid right now anyway. But there's a lot, I feel the language is so important, but how do we go about doing it? How is it gonna work for Walpole Island? It may not be the same with people on the Thames. I think we have a lot more speakers. Some of our speakers are being the elders in Chippewa on the Thames. Jenny goes down there, Linda George goes down there and works with them. So we have to find out what's gonna work for our community, but I just think there needs to be, it needs to be more concrete than this plan is right now. I feel like we're rushing into this.
I agree, and Ron's gonna wrap this up.
Yeah, I kind of have similar things, but I do know the need, there is a need for adult speakers. And that being said, they need to have a separate facility because they can't learn within inside the elementary, whether it's adult education or training, however you want to be. And I think there is a need for that site. It could be this trailer or something else. And that being said, is there's land to the west of the school, which used to be, what was that old, Better Beginnings building in that land. I don't know if that's Island land or not, that they could set that on where that parking lot extends to. And I know before that other land sat next to that was a private families, and they were willing to sell their land. But the island didn't buy into it, or the education didn't buy into it. And that's a possibility where they could buy and purchase that land and set that there. I agree, we need to make language speakers in the adult age because they're the easiest to teach because they have that background already, some of that. And the $15 that they would probably get would be good to offset their cost because they're not a full certified teacher yet, but would be, have some spending money or something, but they're not getting like education, post-secondary students. So I believe that's a good thing, and that's something we need to do. That's just my thoughts on it, and I agree with that piece of that. The others, we have to have discussion.
I'd just like to clarify one thing, when I said $15 an hour, that was a proposal that we plan to set forth to cover student allowance that will pay as a salary for the participants who are taking the adult immersion program, not once they're certified at all taking the program, they receive a salary as an incentive to stay in.
Notice I caught that.
And I would hope that our post-secondary students wish they would get paid on that basis as well. Final comments?
I just think that too, when Keenan was talking about it, that they're all in culture and language, there's so much that we can be doing. And this group is on a good brainstorm. And there are so many more that can contribute to these ideas. And I know there's an opportunity to buy this building, and I know that's probably pressing with them. And the whole idea of meeting teachers, I know that was identified. But there's so many other things that we can go forward with, and I think it needs to slow down. And I appreciate the work that everybody's put into it, and I wouldn't stop them. I would let them continue on their dreams. And ECE is being offered right now to tech online for 2 years. So those who are interested right now want to start. Some of those ideas that are already listed here could already go into place. As for the language, I know Nakisha has done it in his place, and that still can go forward with him. There's still a lot of things that could go forward, but I think as for what it's coming here for to fund this idea as a big whole, I think it needs to be broke down and then brought to a bigger of the community to discuss.
Agreed. Can I have a motion to acknowledge the briefing note for further discussion and development? Moved by Neva, second by Lyle. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Doctor.
That's the end of my briefing notes.
If that's all you have,
Let's hear.
thank you very much.
She can address that.
Oh, the letter.
Oh, the letter,
It's not my
yeah.
briefing notes, but the letter.
Almost got a-
What was the statement of the letter? Okay,
maybe you could, share with us, what you know about the letter, I guess, and some of the, I guess, finer items that are identified in there that need response.
Okay, well, I didn't totally read the letter, but I get the gist of it. There are some parents that are upset that they were not informed of the public health advisory until Monday. When school was dismissed at an emergency basis, if you will, like it dismissed immediately on Friday. There was some confusion, there was, so, you know, people were picking up their kids. The principal was driving home some children that didn't have rides, it was quite busy. And I guess, I learned this Monday morning that Russ did not receive public notice from the public health until about 6 o'clock on Friday evening. At that time, he noticed that the date on the letter was incorrect. And he had some conversation with his vice principal, and there had already been some public communication put out by the school, but through the governance building as to what had happened. So he called the Lantern Public Health, he messaged them and emailed them, and he did not receive anything back from them until Monday morning at about 8 a.m. By 8:15, they sent him a correct version of the letter, and it was at that point that he had dismissed the letter dispersed the letter to be delivered, and it caused some concern within the community.
The question, I guess, that I pull out of the letter there is, why wasn't the telephone picked up and notification provided to parents?
I don't know the answer to that, other than it was very busy afternoon.
James looks like he's got a response.
Right, so, I personally spent quite a bit of time debriefing this situation. We debriefed with Russ this afternoon for an hour and a half, 2 hours, an hour and a half.
Yep.
So there were some external factors, I think, that led to probably addressing this in probably not the most ideal way. Because ideally, when those letters came in on Friday evening, they would have been disseminated right away. One of the factors was that under normal circumstances, our health center is the lead for contact tracing of all Flatiron, including on weekends. So Kyla and Michaela coordinate that process throughout the week. The only exception over the last 6 months has been Friday and Saturday, when Lambton Public Health was overseeing our contact tracing. So, and it appears, because it is a bit problematic that in the conversation with Russ, Lambton Public Health had indicated will be available if you need us, and then they clearly weren't for the next 72 hours. We think that may be because, in addition to doing contact tracing for us, they were providing their own vaccination clinic, which is why our health unit was not available Friday and Saturday. So they had a vaccination clinic, which took many of their resources away from them in the city of Sarnia. And they also they deployed a team to Kettle Point as part of an outbreak management task force. So we think that helps to explain their lack of responsiveness. You know, we looked at the various, why didn't Russ and Craig take other action in terms of dispersing those letters or involve our team? All I can say is that there were a number of external factors, I think, that probably delayed our response time. After the debriefing, there's much more awareness of our roles and responsibilities and communication channels to take that kind of action. In some ways, I'm glad that this occurred when the risk was lower than it could have been, because we want to make sure that the next time we're in a similar situation, all of our internal resources are ready to act, and they're also ready to act without relying on an external agency like Lambton Public Health, which I think is something we learned early on when we took ownership, because initially FINID had a lead role, and we took the lead role early on in this process. So, I think we, through the debriefing, we'll be much better prepared. You know, I think we've addressed where we could have done things differently and involved our team. But again, it was a unique time because of our health team being deployed in vaccinations and Lambton Public Health as well. But I think even if this were to occur again with limited resources, we'd be able to respond.
Two things. I think that we took the appropriate action to take the action that we did at that point in time, because there was no certainty, facts of this in terms of potential outbreak and spread within the school itself. So the safest thing is to get the kids home and away from that particular setting or situation there. Secondly, I think that the teachers who took up the onus, I guess, of acting to contact the parents. You don't necessarily have to wait for a letter to provide some type of explanation on what's going on in terms of why the school is being, the students are being dismissed. I think that's what the majority of the parents were looking for, is some type of immediate direct communication via telephone to explain what is happening. And from what I understand, that didn't occur. Or in some instances it did occur. In other instances, people were waiting for a letter, as you just identified. But I think there was opportunity there for direct immediate communication by telephone to the parents, explaining what was happening at the school. And I think that effort should have been made, that as opposed to waiting 72 hours for a change in date, I guess, on a letter.
I agree. And the first measure was something similar to happen again. At a minimum, Kyla and I would be involved, and we could explore options like that. I think the reason why that didn't occur was because Russ and Craig were unsure of what they could and couldn't do under public health guidelines. So they were unclear as to their role and their limits with regards to confidentiality. In the future, I think they'll pick up the phone, because even though Kyla and I were deployed elsewhere, we would have prioritized this. But that's a lesson. So I appreciate the comment. Absolutely, that would have been an effective measure to take.
And I hear you on that, but I think the appropriate thing to do, I guess, in terms of maintaining the safety of the children there, is to take immediate action and not wait for a letter to be cleared by the local health unit. That we have an overarching responsibility for the safety and care of our children, then immediate action should be taken. And that we can deal with the consequences later, as long as our children are safe.
And I think that's something we'll have to closely monitor, because I look at the other school boards and I think there's more of an awareness there, maybe because of their size, that they have a central role in contact tracing. And like, we may not have done enough in, but that needs a trial scenario for this, but making sure that they understand their role is central.
And I guess that was part of the absence of the information that could have been flowed immediately, is that should I keep my kids separate and away from others in terms of sports activities, et cetera, during the course of that 72 hours, during the course of that particular weekend? I have some questions over here. Ron, then Tyler, then Neva.
I guess just a suggestion is, should it happen again, is I know my kids, when they go to town school, they get from their schools, they get phone calls sent out if it's a message, and it goes out to all the student body, parents and families, and even emails. And so there's two ways you can do it. Now, for those that don't have internet, email, or a phone, then you're out of luck. I don't know how you're gonna adjust that, but for those ones, that's what we get, and they send it out, and it just goes straight away, instantaneous. So an automated system, just food for thought.
Oh,
I have multiple questions. What is the rationale for sending everybody home for 2 weeks? so based on cohorts, every class should be separate from other classes. With limited to no, contact with other grades, like each class is its own little bubble, I guess you could say. So when that bubble has somebody in it who is tested positive for COVID-19, that bubble and that teacher gets sent home. And possibly any other teacher, so like the Ojibwe teacher who may have been in there, like they go from class to class. And then there's lots of guidelines and things around that, that help to keep the school running the best that it can, and at the same time, relying on the safety of it all. So, and then from my understanding, the school is also closed to teachers for the next 2 weeks as well? Or is it gonna be open after that? And I find that very confusing as well, because like, how do some teachers access online? I know there's some teachers that they can go on the camera, they can utilize the things that they have in there. And isn't it only like a 3-day, wait before everything is considered COVID-free, that anything that might have been touched? And of course, I would imagine the janitors are going to clean up the best that they can to the best of their ability as well. So I'm just wondering, because now we're getting to a point, and I think it's also stated in this as well, that the kids are home quick. They're home for the month of January, into February, and now they're back home for another 2 weeks with teachers with limited access to the resources because they're all shuffled out the door Friday afternoon, right? So it just, I was just wondering, like, what is the reason that the whole school got sent home with one class, and sounds like another one with the potential, based on, like, contact tracing. And like, just, calling those immediate bubble, and the bubble cohort quickly and effectively, instead of that 72-hour wait.
The official plan for that day on Friday morning was to send the 2 cohorts home. The direction came from leadership at all costs, the safety of the children were the priority. So the call was made to close the school. So this is what triggered the closure of the school.
And how about the teacher thing? Like, why
The
is
teachers, they all went home Friday as well. There is an established plan in place already for them to have access to the school on a staggered schedule during the times of COVID, and we exercised that almost effectively immediately, except for Monday for cleaning purposes. So they had a Google Drive, and they're able to access the schedule of when they can come in and get their things. Prepared to teach online. It's open to staff. They have to just put it in the schedule so that there's not an abundance of.
Okay, James?
Just add to that, so that you're aware of our current policy. An additional layer that would have triggered a school dismissal under our policy has to do with if we didn't know where the transmission came from, or if we knew the transmission came within the school. So that would trigger a dismissal under the policy. We wouldn't confer with the chief. And that was something that was approved back in September before the school reopening, to be a little more cautious than public school boards are. So what that would have meant in this scenario, once we have a lab confirmed positive in a classroom, plus a family member of that positive in another classroom, if we didn't know where the transmission had come from, we would have closed the school. Because we did know that the transmission didn't come from the school, we could have kept it open under the policy, but we had various consultation, consulted with the chief, and agreed to take the most precautious route with this.
Yeah.
Usually a follow-up when there's, to something like this, you do a debriefing with those parties in play or who weren't in play, and what are the procedure, you review it, go through it, and then talk about if this is to happen again, who's gonna do what and how that can go. So that's something like, is that gonna take place with Russ and the school and the teachers and staff?
I would say that that's ongoing. We've been debriefing at our level, and it'll be an ongoing process. That we're probably happy with.
And going forward, your strategy is there if this was to occur. Your strategy is in place again for if the same thing happens,
Oh,
or
yes.
different scenarios happen, that you kind of like went through, talked them out and talked about what do you do?
And my decision was based on my conversations that I had with Tyler, that you have two options here, two considerations. Is your first task to ensure that you get your kids through a pandemic? Or is your first priority as a school to ensure that they minimize the day's absence, I guess, from the process? I opt with the option to, I want to make sure that I have minimal harm, I guess, or opportunity for infection for the children at the school. And I will always take that direction in this, in terms of my decision making, because we can always catch up with the school somewhere down the line. Our first task is to make sure that we get these kids through the pandemic on a safe course. Ron?
And I'm glad, and I commend you for making that decision, and the others that made that decision. I heard a lot of good things about it, and people were happy with it, so you're not gonna hear no beef from me. So congratulations, and Rich.
Thank you. James?
And the last thing I'll add, I think what we've learned in this pandemic is that in this environment, policies change rapidly, and decisions from leadership change policies on continuous basis, because the environment and the risk and the known risk changes on almost a daily basis. So it's something we've become used to for the past 12 months. I remember what kept happening in the fall is every Friday night, there would be a cabinet decision from the province, and then the bureaucrats would let me know Saturday morning. And that, I think, happened 6 different Saturdays over a 4-month period. And on every one of them, I had to call members of the emergency control room and say, this is what the province did, are we going to respond or not? Which, you know, that's their process, and it has to do with how quickly what we know about the risk is changing.
I thought I'd seen the Marshall first, then Tyler.
Okay, so in the matter of being prepared, this is a question for Dr. Kathy. Are all the teachers and support staff who provide homework or lessons to the students for pickup, they do it during the week and then they drop it off on Friday? My grandson is a really, really proactive teacher who's, I guess, thought of this scenario where the school could be closed in another week or two and has all of the 2 weeks lessons for him to pick up. Are all the teaching staff doing the same thing for all their students? Or is it?
To my knowledge, yes, because even amidst in-class learning, the option for remote learning still exists, so the lesson plans are there continuously for both in-class and remote learning. So they are prepared and they are ready to that in the event like this.
And the second question I had, this letter that came to me, I was dropped off March the 8th, yesterday. No names on here, it's just the parents or guardians, and it's from the Mountain Public Health. And it's telling me someone in my household has been in contact with, you know, a student or someone who's had a positive test. I didn't know who this child, which one of my children this pertained to. I had high school and I had elementary. So finally got it from Cody, who received it when it was dropped off, that it pertained to 2 of my granddaughters who normally would be at the school, but their mother decided not to send them. They haven't been to school since before Christmas. They're doing their work at home. but they got this letter with their, so are their names in the system as potential, as people that should be quarantined because they didn't come in contact with anyone, they haven't been to school?
And the list that was given for delivery was just the class list of the classrooms that the COVID came from. So on that list, it wasn't identified if they were at-home learners or in-class learners. So that letter, which was delivered to every classmate from those classes. There was no differentiation of who was actually in contact with who was.
Right, but now are my children's, names as being in contact and have to quarantine as per what this letter says? Like, how do I get their names off there?
The process would be for you to call in from public health, but their name shouldn't be in that registry or our health center for self-isolation. Only because this is the process that normally flows through the school, mitigating contact with the class. So definitely if you have questions, I'd call that number, but I think what they'll find is that they rely on the school contact tracing. So you would be able to talk to a health professional, you would explain, my children have not been to school since Christmas. They would say, in that case, it doesn't apply to you.
I think that would be entirely unnecessary if there was proper screening prior to the release of the form letter or whatever it is identifying being in contact, where they are not. So we're limiting this whole meeting for her to do exactly what you're instructing them. I think there's an onus on whoever's releasing that letter from that class to give it a proper screening. Is that person actually in the class? As opposed to sending a letter out to a parent or a guardian that sends up false alarms. Tyler.
So. I do commend you for taking the action that you did. Safety is key. However, that lack of schooling is slowly starting to catch up to that safety. So just be cognizant of that. I think you're right in this moment that there probably are going to be okay in the majority of them. There are going to be some that need help, and I hope that you guys realize that. But there are going to be students that need additional help with the school that they missed. It does affect them, and there's some that can catch on pretty quick. So, but that mental health and that education is starting to creep up, and I just, from what I understand, that that's there too. So I think, and then the other concern was when I first heard that the whole school was shutting down. I was like, well, what kind of safety measures did they take? Did they realize that those cohorts were mixing up too much, and they decided that they were realize that maybe something was not at a high safety priority? That was my first concern. Because those little cohort bubbles, yes, they can mix together and everything else. And there's lots of safety precautions in place to help alleviate the mental health and well-being, as well as safety. And you're right, one does take priority, but the other part still exists. That's just my concern.
Agreed. Eva?
So when concerns and complaints come through, you should go through the process of community concern. It should be addressed by board of supervisors, that staff person that complaint goes to, and then follow up, be sent back that it is being addressed to the complaint team. That can be part of the follow-up. I wouldn't necessarily do it to all of the school, but in some way, I think a response to the whole community about almost a debrief, but not, but just more about information about what we put into place going forward. Due to the COVID concern at our school. Because communities are going to talk, and it's good to get out a clear communication to our community about what has happened and what's being addressed. In a very, like a blanket, like fashion, not pinpointing this concern specifically. Just for consideration.
Ken,
Just in addition to what Neva was saying, I think that's important. So, we've been mostly focused on the school, and then it's clear, right, that students came in, brought this in from home. But, kind of looking at the grander picture of this, because no matter what, we're all in this together. And people lose sight of that. And one of the things that I see at my place of business is that we get some irate community members that come in. And for whatever reason, got to vent with me. And the only message that I point out to them is they need to understand that it's an unusual time. It is for everybody. It doesn't matter what side of the bridge you're on, right? And at the end of the day, it's risk. We all take the risk. Every one of us in here. And I'll use us as a prime example. This community has gotten lax. You see the outbreak of COVID coming back here again, right? Look at us tonight. I wonder how many of us had masks on, right? Totally opposite of last month. That's happening across this community too. People need, this is where I agree with you. There needs to be some form of communication that goes up to this community, where people understand the risks when you go off of this island every time. And if it's multiple times in one day, that risk goes up. And we gotta take ownership, all of us do. Right? And that goes to every individual in this community. Because COVID didn't start here, but we're bringing it back here. And that's what people need to understand. So we're not out of it yet. And I think a lot because of what's happening around us, and see the states opening up more and more, right? All that stuff has an impact on our community. So I think we need to ensure and put communications out on a steady basis, reminding people of what that risk level is. That we all need to take on. So what I'm kind of tired of is for the people that do get infected with that test positive in our community. You know, there's a lot of people, a lot of individuals that are hard on them, call them down, right? Think it's ill will, and that they're out to deliberately infect other people in this community, not knowing that they're a carrier or what have you. We tear each other apart, and that's, I think, needs to stop here. So I know what we do at my place of business is we've been utilizing our mailbox and we sterilize it for people that are infected. But they can get no service, nobody will help them. They do arrive with just, you know, their family, their little bubble. And so we'll put goodies or ice cream or whatever out there for them. Right? We don't frown upon them. We look at how we can help them. And I think that's the bigger message that's being lost in this community. It's just upsetting to me that we get these irate community members talking about other community members for something that's not their fault. So I think that needs to be portrayed within this community. Right? So I think we all need to keep that in mind. It doesn't matter if it's in the education system, it doesn't matter if it's in this building, businesses at the mall. You know, we gotta start approaching this from a different point of view. Right? I don't look at what happens beyond this reserve. I care about what happens here. But I also understand the risk. So fortunately for myself, I know that I've got a place of isolation. If me or anybody else in my family get it, I have that, I guess, additional protocol I can take for myself. Right? But again, it's not what's in intention. It's like, how can I protect people and help people? That's how we need to look at this. And I think you'll see a change So just bear that in mind. That's kind of what I can offer at this point, just the personal experience I've had.
Well taken, and we do live in unusual times, and we have to certainly show more compassion to a band member. I had a person here, then what?
I just wanna reiterate what Neva said, I think we do need to, a letter needs to go out to that classroom parents and apologize. You know, that shouldn't have happened, but it happened, and there was a lot going on. And acknowledge that she did write this letter. I said, she came to me with these concerns, and I said, are you willing to put it in writing? I said, nothing's gonna happen unless you put something in writing. And she said, yes, she put it in writing, and she gave it to me tonight before the meeting, so I think she needs to be acknowledged for doing this. And I know there's other parents that were upset too. They said, no one told us. They said we get a call, or whatever classroom it was, there was no call that came in. They said we get a call, that came from the school, there is no call. We're waiting for this letter. Do we have to wait for a letter from our health center, our Blumpton Health Unit? What if they're busy? Is there a backup plan? Is there something concrete in place that says the school can do that? These are the kids that were in attendance that day, not just the class list, but who was in attendance that day? Those are the parents that can be notified. There needs to be a backup plan, not just, let's wait for the health center to do it. You're not giving out anyone's name. So I think that it can be done at the level, at the school. Am I wrong, James?
No, you're correct.
That needs to happen, first and foremost.
Cecily, on this side?
Cody.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, the education, Chase Martin here at, our island school, they take attendance for the kids that come in. And just simply doing that background check right there at the island school would have prevented that letter coming from the Lambton Health Unit, and now telling two children that, had zero contact with the school since, for months, that they are now being quarantined, and if they're, stopped in the outside community, their names are, taken down, and then you got a red flag saying, oh, you should be quarantined right now, that's a $100,000 fine and all this other stuff, so, treat this like a fire drill and just learn from it. There's all kinds of ways we could have, this stuff right here, right at home, in our own school here. We have attendance people that log in, students. We have all this other logging equipment that we can look back, and we can do our own background checks. That's just what I gotta say here for that letter from the last.
If there's nothing further, then I think we can conclude this part of the discussion on this topic today. Heard just about from everyone on it. So I think the instruction will go to James to end with Kathy, I guess, to provide some type of background or explanation, I guess, to the parents at the school on the reason why action was taken and why the leadership acted on the side of extreme caution as opposed to taking unknown risks, in terms of safety. Certainly, we all understand that we live in very trying and very strange times. Certainly, we attempt to put policies in place, but through trial and error, we find that in changing circumstances that we have to continually modify those policies and approaches, I guess, to deal with the issue that we have in terms of providing good and effective schooling to our children, and also balancing that with the ongoing health of our students getting education. But we are trying our best, I guess, in terms of dealing with it. And I want to commend, I guess, the efforts of the control group and the personnel at the school that for doing the best they can in trying times. And as leadership, we can only support those efforts and respond, I guess, to the concerns of the community to try harder, I guess, and to be more responsive and more understanding, and hopefully that over the course of time that and through the vaccination process and as they call herd immunity, that this will all pass and the dark wind will be gone, I guess, from the community, and hopefully at some near future point in time we'll have a better place to live. So, we all go forward with this. And, try our best.
Is someone going to follow up and provide a response to this?
I just mentioned that to James and Kathy.
Okay.
If you were listening, you would picked up on it.
I have about 10 questions here, but I think they're very interesting.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank
Kathy.
you for having me here.
But
You have nice peaceful meetings here. It's a bit rougher at council.
don't worry, it gets rougher. We're just putting on a good show for you.
Well, should you make that upgrade, we'll invite you back so they can.
All right. I'll come back. Thank you.
Okay, is that pizza here?
Yep.
Okay, I guess we'll take another little short break and continue reading.
Can we share these or do these back forever?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you should. It should be
Collected. Put it when they walk by.
Second round.
Should have numbered them.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys did the right thing.
Well, I've always been instructed to err on the side of extreme precaution.
Yeah.
As opposed to taking on the risk.
Well, there's no difference if there was somebody armed and dangerous. And somebody says, come pick up your child now. That happens in the bigger schools, right? In the mainland, if there's a threat. Well, they could lock them down, but if they told them to get them out of here, would you be safe? Well, why do I have to come pick up my kid? Because I can't come home from work. You know, that's the thing, it's like, it's an imminent thing. And there's a risk. Kid,
Oh, absolutely.
we're going to start after.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't worry about your paycheck.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
worry about the kid.
Yeah.
And I do commend you, there was a question, I was just stating that there is, just seeing it firsthand.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see some kids like, all that.
Oh, yeah, I hear that.
And they have like these big precautions in place, which in turn, like, have worked. Like, I work in a big city with a bunch of school, and it's working, like, and we're following the same thing, so. Yeah, but it's a tough decision to make, it's something that has to be done, and again, I'm fully behind you on that, so.
Ready to go?
Second period?
Yeah, let's get going here. Where are you at?
Ready to make some motion there.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
I'm ready.
Motion to adjourn.
He's got a hot day, he's got a hot day coat. He's all shaved up and haircut and.
I finally caught him. He was booked up there last time.
Who do you go?
George is,
Oh, Georgie. I got mine done going on 2 weeks ago now.
last time I went to First Church, come out looking like a stop sign.
I was almost gonna do the COVID cut story down in the wood.
I told him it's a good thing you're open, I was gonna try my luck at cutting my own hair. I said, but I can't reach the back of my head, I would have brought back the mullet.
Yeah.
Sure. My battery shoots is right along.
I need to shred.
Yeah. Update all my updates, took me an hour. It took me another half an hour to reboot. Because you're probably going to go on,
Okay, let's start up again. Call the meeting back to order. We'll continue on with my report. I'm going to give you a quick report back on the meeting that we had, Rob and I had with the Caldwell First Nation. And it has to do with the incursion of the Haudenosaunee, Six Nations and the Six Nations Institute into our territory. They are looking at trying to receive benefits, I guess, from a project that is happening through Hydro One. And it's a two-line transmission project from Chatham to Lakeshore near Leamington, I guess, quite close to the territory of the Caldwells. We met with them, had a discussion with them on a common front, or to establish a common front to push them back and push them out of our territory, and to at the same time form a political alliance with the other members of the Three Fires communities here in Southern Ontario. And as a result of that meeting, we've had I guess a very good buy-in by the political reps from Caldwell, and they will join us, I guess, in terms of that Three Fires push to get Mohawk out of our territory and get complete recognition from the province and from province in particular, I guess, in terms of whose territory is this, and we've always asserted that it's a Three Fires traditional territory, and we're going to maintain that and do whatever is necessary to ensure that that stays that way for our great grandchildren. So, Ron, is you wish to add, I guess, to the president?
Yeah, exactly what the chief stated, but also, you know, that, could kind of hear, and you might hear this as we go on, meeting with the other First Nations, the chief mentioned that we should have a summit, and I agree. And I made a mention to him that we should probably have a summit here, considering this was Three Fires, sacred ground at one time and still is. And that being said, is invite a chief and maybe one counselor or two counselors and one of their technicians, whether it's legal or whatever they have on that. And do that sometime in the near future, with maybe orange or yellow. That being said, we could host that at the arena or even outside, maybe, I don't know, those are just things we can think about. But, you know, some of the other things you might hear along the line is people call themselves a nation and their communities within a nation. And so they have to be cautious on them calling themselves a nation because they're part of our nation. And we're part of their nation. They're not individually or unto themselves. So we have to kind of correct that terminology to a certain point. And, you know, make sure that they're understanding the common ground is like the chief stated, keep the Haudenosaunee out of the Anishinaabe territory, the Three Fires Confederacy land, because they're encroaching upon it. And if they encroach upon it, it could cost us not only in this project, but future things, our treaty rights, other monies in the millions to billions of dollars later on, by them being consulted or having a say. We're not given that say in their territories or things that they do within their backyard, the element tract. And that's the only place they should be, is in the element tract. And we have to be assertive and make sure that they're kept there. And they pull out different things. So the chief and our technicians, our legal, have all pointed that out. And so we should be taking a strong stand, and we should be reaching to people that we know. I know I've already talked to some other chiefs and counselors from other First Nations in regards to this, and they said, well, who has to lead the hand? You know, so that means we got to lead the way. We've been leading the way in a lot of things, but we have to lead the way in this. And so it's important and imperative that we do this because we have one of the most significant amount of land claims as well. And if we are to be taken serious, we must and we have to do this. Any question?
James, you want to add a couple comments from a technical perspective?
Yeah, I think probably the best outcome would be if the other First Nations more or less agree with our position in terms of pressuring the Ontario government and possibly the federal government to keep Haudenosaunee out of the consultation process in Southwestern Ontario. So this piece would be to make sure that our messaging is consistent, and then likely what would have to happen with the pressure on the relevant. So the other option is individual letters, which I've seen in the past haven't been very effective. We've seen the make inroads in the process, but this will potentially have more of a financial impact in the future. So I think with the right, I'm sure it's there.
Questions? Neil?
How do you go forward with like doing that? Is it gonna be what form, like a press release, or is it gonna be a letter, or is it gonna be private until it can become public?
We're still strategizing on that. Those various points were raised in the course of our previous meeting and the meeting we had today. And we're looking at key personnel internally, I guess, in terms of identifying what our strategy will be with two areas. One, establishing our alliances with the other Three Fires Nations, as well as how are we going to handle, I guess, more importantly, what we see that we have to fight back in terms of the provincial government's Indian policy dealing with land rights through Southwestern Ontario. I think that is the real key or the real bothersome thing that we're presented with here. I think that it's being triggered by the province, and that instruction is going to Hydro One, and it's also being accepted and taken advantage by the Haudenosaunee, I guess, in terms of their incursion into our traditional territory and demanding benefits from projects in our territory. We have to make a very, very strong political pushback on that, and I don't know where it's going to go in terms. It may result in demonstrations, I guess, with the Chatham project, with our other Three Fires Allies to reinforce our messages. And also, we are looking at establishing a meeting with, somewhere down the line with the various cabinet ministers or whoever's available at the provincial level to hear our concerns and to try and put direct influence in changing their course of policy and treating us or their lack of respect, I guess, in terms of recognizing our land. I don't know how this is going to go, I guess, in terms of any type of interference, future interference with our Aboriginal title litigation. Is there a potential there to see, James?
Well, one thing that we may want to look at is whether we trigger some kind of litigation, if that's the only option to get away from where we are. Because what we're finding is that Ontario is relying on the lower court decision called RV Ireland to support the idea that the Six Nations have treaty right in this area. And that was a relatively small court case that had to do with some hunters from Oneida. And I doubt the litigation was at the most, it maybe cost $200,000 total to reach that court decision that now could impact us in tens of millions of dollars if that we protest. So it's probably worthwhile to look at channeling some resources, and we would want to do that in a way that puts our best position forward. So I think that's something we would continue to strategize. Ideally, the ministries would want to avoid that kind of litigation and would take a more proactive approach. But it does seem like in the long run, it would be an effective strategy. Yes. You look at the potential benefit that Six Nations is taking away from us in the current program, likely in the tens of millions of dollars. Right. So when you put that into perspective, it's something to consider in terms of looking at litigation that's going to fight away that Ireland decision, because there's really no historical basis for Six Nations.
And from a purely technical perspective, maybe you could explain to council what Oneida and the Haudenosaunee rely upon in terms of the Nantan of 1701 and the one dish, one spoon.
Okay, sure. So what they rely on is two agreements that were made in 1701 and 1702. The 1701 is the dish with one spoon agreement at the Treaty of Montreal. That was between the Council of the Three Fires and Six Nations. And that ended roughly 100 years of warfare that took place in Southern Ontario. And the outcome of that was that our people repatriated Southern Ontario, and Six Nations was pushed out entirely. And from that time forward, from 1701, they occupied what's now upstate New York and didn't have any presence in Southern Ontario at all. And that's well documented in history, and it supports our Aboriginal title claim that we controlled the territory. We had the ability to remove other nations from the territory. 1 year after that, the Six Nations negotiated the Nantan deed in, I believe, what's near Long Island or Manhattan with the British. And what that entailed was, in exchange for gifts, they signed a deed giving them the tract of land in Southern Ontario, right, in exchange for some hunting. And so what we're relying on in historical fact, at that point in time, they didn't control Southern Ontario. They hadn't controlled it for over 100 years. And they very clearly didn't control it at that moment of time, right? So it was probably in their best interest to sign a treaty for land that they didn't control, nowhere near the land that they were occupying, because they were squarely in upstate New York at that time. But that's what they rely on, and that's what the judge relied on in the Irish decision, and that's the basis for the consultation process now. And the presence that they have in Southern Ontario now in terms of reserve is the result of various treaties they made with Chippewa nations, which provides even more support that they needed our permission to re-enter the territory even after the British Crown era of Upper Canada. So there's really no historical basis once you start opening it up for a treaty right for Six Nations in this area. Originally, the court decision had to do with hunting, but now we see it may have to do with equity participation in large infrastructure, projects. So potentially, the stakes are much higher.
That's correct, and we move without prejudice, I guess, in terms of the other, whether it's the Haudenosaunee or the Métis, that they can clearly do what they want within their specific territories. But clearly, we want to make a statement that you keep your nose out of our traditional territory and let us conduct business with whomever it is in terms of benefiting from negotiations with corporations, et cetera. But it's specific to our territory, then we are the true landowners, the people with the jurisdiction. This is our traditional territory, and we are the ones that are going to benefit from those types of negotiations. There's a smaller danger point, as I mentioned, that the Métis are now trying to muscle in or trying to establish some type of presence within our territory for looking to secure some type of benefit, the good graces of the province. Keenan.
Yeah, I just want to elaborate on that. So, going back about 12 years ago, where there was a bunch of new federal regulations coming out, and at that time, I was on council, and the picture that was coming forward was that the province and the feds were giving the Métis an equal say within our territory. So I remember the big one that came forward was the species at risk, and we were fighting it here, right? And we, the province and the federal weren't giving us any attention, but they were listening more to the Métis. So I remember being specifically on that committee, that advisory panel, and those discussions had come forward. Right, and so the argument we put forward at that time was that the Métis had no land base. Why do they even have a say in this law? Right, you're talking to the people that are taking care of this land, and there's a reason why there's so many endangered species here. Right, so what I'm kind of hearing, what I kind of gather out of this, is that it seems to be another ploy. The one question I do have, or want clarification on, so for the Haudenosaunee, is there elected officials in that, or is that what they deem as what do you call that, hereditary chief or counselor? Yeah. Because I remember getting into an argument, I went to Aboriginal title conference in Toronto, and that was going 10 years ago, and there was two groups that started fighting right in front of us. We were in a room like this, and it was the elected official and hereditary. They were not right in front of us, and they booted out the elected officials. And then they turned around and they came after every individual in that room. I was accused of stealing land from the Alderman tract. That was my purpose of being here. But it was crazy, right? But it almost sounds like that's kind of gaining strength. So I don't think that ever fizzled out, because we never had any sort of resolution other than that whole conference was completely abolished. Everything that came out through that was done. So my concern is this kind of a stretch going beyond? Is that something that's stirring up Six Nations period?
I guess the quick response on that is that yes, it's involving both the elected council and accommodation to the Haudenosaunee Development Institute, which has sort of a representation from the Longhouse people, traditional state. So they're both looking at securing some interests and incursion into our traditional lands and looking at benefiting from that. And I think part and parcel that springs from the Constitution, I guess, the 1982 Constitution in Section 35, that recognizes all those Aboriginal groups there. And as a result of Supreme Court decisions that identify that there is the obligation or that duty to consult with the Aboriginal people, it has now opened the door for governments like Ontario with that type of thinking to invite the Métis and the Haudenosaunee down into our territory to meet that obligation for the duty to consult. So that has sort of opened the door, but the onus is on us to push back and to reinforce our strength with our allies and to assert our title and our ownership of the land to ensure that we have it safeguarded for our grandchildren. Additional questions? I will, Keenan?
Just a question, has there been any official position put forth by, the Mississaugas? Because they've always been separate too.
I'll let James touch on that.
So they are a client of our claims lawyer in Fullerton as well. So he's also represented them in pushing that claims made by HCI and Six Nations of the Grand River Annexation projects in their area. So they have a number of similar issues.
And they're very much interested, I guess, in terms of joining alliance with us and to, for us to collectively put that big pushback on them. And when I say them, it'd be Haudenosaunee. I will, if we haven't already, we will provide information packages as the information is developed. I don't know if you've already received the information on the one dish, one spoon, but that it has not been provided to council, that will be provided to council, plus any of the interesting developments we have in our discussions with the other First Nations. We are pushing for additional discussions with Chippewa Friends and obviously Kettle Point and others that are aligned with the Three Fires Confederacy. And as Ron has pointed out, they're relying us to provide the spearhead, I guess, for this push, and we will oblige them. Keenan?
Chief, so now I'm saying all that, man, I'm wondering if, treaty reviews gonna be part of our planning sessions. I think it would be good for all council, so we get up to speed on all that and actually specific details around. Cause that's what we're kind of gonna need going forward, right? If we're gonna unite as a whole.
Well, we kind of did that the other week in
I know them, new comments.
So when we're given our computers, you guys will too, there's stuff in regards to that in your computer that was downloaded to that. So you all have that package and some of that stuff has been given to you through email, through Alicia or whoever, right? So some of that stuff is there, and it gives even the maps of the trees that we have. During the planning session, I believe we're having Kim and Dean and Janet come in too, right, Chief?
Right.
And have them go over some of this stuff. So we have a number of different things that we need to get Chief and Council abreast on and show them all the things, because it alludes to bigger pictures. And following up with those in sync. So there'll be a strategy, but it's just, we gotta bring everybody else up so that we're not here and there.
There's some interesting developments.
Yes, very.
Okay, I will move on, I guess, to my next point there. Audit status, where are we with the audit there, James?
So we still have a date scheduled for Wednesday to present the draft audit financial statements for council's approval. So that will happen next Wednesday. We've already presented our draft financial statements to the auditors. They're running more tests, which is what auditors do, but we are still intending to have that wrapped up this week. The auditors are on site again tomorrow.
Now that that's cleared out of the gate, I guess what type of prep are we doing for next year's audit?
Well, I've been telling staff, it's a bit like a surgeon, and you won't be rusty with this one because you'll get right into it. But they're well aware of that. They're trying to celebrate the feeling of having completed these financial statements. They're very busy with the budget as well. We're trying the best we can. As expected, there are some delays. Our goal is still to have that available for council next week.
And I would like to set a date to this in terms of the challenges as to finance and administration here, that I would like to see a draft audit for this previous fiscal cycle by July 1st.
Great. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to achieve that.
Thank you. He's on record. We will hold him to that.
So
Marcia,
are we getting a presentation from the auditors on the 17th? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
And when was that scheduled?
I didn't.
2 o'clock.
So March 17th at 2 o'clock.
I think sent it out in my email to confirm.
Some of us weren't getting emails, remember? There was a problem with, so, did you get that?
I didn't get any email yet, but I'm
Okay, I didn't-
put it on your calendar. Yeah.
So,
2 p.m.
St. Patrick's Day.
That's here in the council chamber.
Right.
Okay.
I would also request, I don't know if it was completed there, that we need to do 2 things in terms of the project financing for the gas station convenience store project. One, we have to rescind, I believe, a previous band council resolution made by the previous council to fund the project through own source revenue. And we are now going to take a route where we take advantage of a $748,000 grant from ISC to fund this project. But to access and use that properly, I guess, to satisfy government, we will have to take a short-term loan from the Tecumseh Development Corporation. I know that there was a previous BCR developed and passed by the previous council for that amount. So what I need to complete the funding package for the project is to revise that previous BCR. Has that been undertaken? Not yet, but if we could have a mover and seconder to rescind the previous motion dealing with that previous funding format to move that along.
Are we jumping down to the in-camera stuff? No?
No,
That's the first in-camera item is this.
pardon me?
The first.
You want to keep this in camera, this funding?
I don't think we need to, but the attachment is in the in-camera section.
7.1.
We're down to 7. We bypassed COVID-19 update from Carla.
Yeah,
She's still on?
yes, she's still there. Come on. She's still up there.
I'm here.
I heard her voice somewhere.
Did you want me to give you a quick update about the vaccination process and progress?
Did I wake you up?
I'm just laying in bed listening.
Okay, go ahead, then you can go back to sleep.
All righty. So far at the seniors building, we've given the first dose to 20 individuals. Tomorrow will be their second dose. So I'll be back at work at 7:30 tomorrow morning. In the past weekend, many of you I've seen at the clinic. On Friday, we did 252 doses of vaccine. And then Saturday morning, we completed another 138 for a total of 380 people vaccinated the last weekend. We probably could have pushed through a few more. We did identify areas for improvement, but overall, I think as a first go, it wasn't too bad, seeing that we didn't really get confirmation that we were going to have the clinic until the Monday before. So we had about 3.5 days to get that together. So this health center staff pulled together really, really well. Everybody fulfilled every role I could ever expect of them. Everything went really well in that way. People stayed late, people came in early. So we were able to contact all of our contact information for people 65 and over and get as many of those people done as we could. We still have a few more to catch up with, but we've done the bulk of them on reserve. For that, next we'll be meeting with Lambton County to determine what our best plan is for rolling out the rest of the vaccine. If we want to go with the big clinics, or they've told us today that they had Moderna vaccine that could be available, unless we wanted to go with the Pfizer. If we have the Moderna, we might be able to do our own clinics, like daily kind of shots. So we'll have to look at what's best, what's the best plan for the community. So I'll be sitting down with Michaela and the staff, and we'll be looking at that over the next couple days. Some good news, FNIB finally came through with some additional supports. So we will have 2 nurses coming into the community for 2 weeks, just to help with the contact management and setting up immunization clinics, and just overall answering questions. We get probably about, probably between Michaela and I, we probably get about 100 questions coming through by phone call, just of individuals in the community, different programs and things. So they'll be here to help us with that, and FNIB will be covering the costs of those 2 nurses. What else do we have? So basically, we're looking at doing some more clinics. We'll be opening it up to all adults rather than just doing the age groups. We've got over 100 consents gathered since Monday, so we're getting a really good response, and we will be doing further, we'll actually be doing some advertising and things for the upcoming clinics. So we'll probably get some more consents that way. But as for the vaccination, we're on our way, and hopefully we'll get everyone vaccinated shortly.
Carla, on behalf of Chief and Council, I want to commend you, I guess, on a very well-organized and effective clinic that you coordinated over the past Friday and Saturday. A job well done, and I know that the council shares those thoughts, and I've heard very, very good comments from the community members that were part of that vaccination clinic, and they were very impressed on your organization and your handling and the systematic approach you took to handle such a large group of people coming and going there. So on behalf of Chief and Council and the community, I want to thank you and your staff very much, I guess, Jimmy Wedge, for that.
Well, I would also like to thank council, because without your support, a lot of the stuff wouldn't be able to be done. You guys are a supportive group, and I greatly appreciate that.
Marcia has a question.
Kyla, if we have the Pfizer shot, can we have the Moderna? Is it Moderna?
Yeah.
Or do we have to have a Pfizer follow-up?
Yeah, you would have to stay with the Pfizer.
Okay.
No cocktails?
I don't know. I was thinking about getting all 4 shots myself.
You want to get super armored up. Elaine?
Kyla, I have a question. It's Elaine.
Yep.
Are we gonna get immunization cards or some kind of verification saying that we have the vaccine?
Unfortunately, we don't have really good Wi-Fi at many of the buildings. Otherwise, we would have had people putting it into the COVAX system, and you would have got a printed receipt that day. So we've taken the vaccination consent back to the health unit. They're going to train one of our staff members on the COVAX system. And once we print out all the receipts, we'll put one in your file so that we have a copy for you. And then we'll provide you with your receipt of your vaccination. And that'll probably be needed if you ever want to travel or go to the States or things in the future. I'm sure that they'll be looking for those vaccination records. So we'll make sure that we have a copy and we'll provide you with one as well.
Might be glad.
Any further questions or comments? Ron?
I guess, you bring an interesting, comment up, Kyla, that you gave out 300 and some shots. What's done with the remaining shots?
So what remaining shots? Hello? Are you there? Hello? Hello?
One moment, Kyla. I think we lost our mic.
Okay.
And what did they do with the rest if they?
Only about 300 and something.
388.
Alicia might be able to hear the communication with Kyla. Can you ask her what is the status of the, I believe it's 1,800 dosages that were supposed to be Los Alamos First Nation musicians.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Can you hear them, Kyla?
I can hear them.
Kyla, we're back, I guess. Somebody had a question. Who was
Me.
Ron.
Hi, Kyla, again, Ron. So the question is you gave out 300 and some odd shots. I believe that there was 500 vaccines that were given to Walpole, is that correct? And if so, where are the remaining, or where are they being done with the remaining shots?
We weren't given 500 doses. What had happened was they said, we have 500 doses. Can you give them? I said, we will try. So we got 252 people the first day. We got enough consents for that. We had a cutoff time on Friday at noon. I had to tell her how many consents we had. I added about 20 extra people on that for people we didn't have yet. So whoever had called by noon, we had gotten them in. So it's not that we don't have those vaccines coming, it's that we can't store them at the health center because we don't have the freezers. So we'll be giving those over the next couple of weeks, but we just had to tell her what we had a cutoff at noon. So that's why we didn't give out 500. We probably could have, but we still had that cutoff time of noon.
Kyla,
Yeah.
it's Marcia. So what I'm hearing then is it's important for people to register and get a time slot. So you have the numbers. Would that help you?
Yeah, we've already collected 120, I think, consents or names for consents. So what we're doing, as soon as I get back, get a chance, we're just really busy, swamped with the stuff at the school, the stuff at the health center, the stuff with the remaining vaccines. Plus I haven't even looked at my budget. So we're really swamped at the health center. So we will be getting advertisements out for people to just contact us at the health center, give us their name, their age, and their phone number, and we'll get them into the next coming up vaccination clinics.
Okay, thank you.
Carla, one last question. How many, total, dosages do we have earmarked for Walpole?
We have earmarked as many as we need. So anybody who needs a vaccination, we will immunize at, like, eventually, like, we're just pushing through as many as we can. And we will just keep having clinics until anybody who wants a vaccine has had it. The other thing is that the surrounding areas, so off-reserve people can call Chatham Kent. They can call the different places that have SOHAC services. In Lambton, SOHAC is looking after the off-reserve people as well. You don't really have, the basic thing is that you don't really have to have an address off-reserve. You can just tell them that you live in Chatham Kent. You can tell them that you live in off-reserve in Sarnia Lambton. They can't ask you where you actually live.
Good information. Any final comments, questions? Carla, I want to thank you for your time, and we'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. Have a good meeting.
Okay, moving on to, before we jump there and went to Kyla because she was talking away. Got our update. We'll get back on the funding for the gas station. I suggested that we go in camera for that part, I guess, to deal with some of the numbers and funding sources and part of the overall strategy that we're going to take, I guess, to finalize the financial results for it. Motion to go on camera. Moved by Keenan, second by Elaine. All those in favor? Carrie, we're in camera.
Where's our tech person?